come back together again. We've known each other for 15 years, 20 years or so. Josh, what's the number?
19 years this May.
19 years this May, roughly. Josh is a numbers guy. He keeps those numbers in his head, and I got everything I can do to remember breakfast. So we were going to have the CEO and founder of OperationsHERO's, Pat Buchanan, or PB as he's known, on. But as it goes with the new startup, when business calls, he had to go. So we've got the right-hander from the bullpen. We brought in Andy Townsend here so that he can fill in the Pat square in the squares. We've got Scott Carpenter, who's the co-founder of Operations Heroes, and Andy is a consulting working with the group. So we've got a lot of experience from sales to implementation to support. And then on my end, I was always the user. So I think we've got a full circle here with everybody. So I guess I'll go to you, Scott. Tell me what it was like back in the 2000s when in the dark ages when you were trying to sell, CMMS software, and it was like on a floppy disk, wasn't it?
Well, even before that, it was we started, in the 90s, they were using fax machines or Pat and Charlie, your Tennessee network to deliver the work request. So it really came a long way when the internet came out in 1999. Google started bringing people to the internet. Everybody started going and using it, and it was a different world, changing from a fax machine to carrying it over there in person, or the hog muggings that you always talk about. You and Josh talk about. People just they weren't doing anything except people grabbing them in the hall and saying, "Hey, I need to get this work done. So how can we help you?" And so it came a long, long way between probably 95 and 2000. It really changed the whole, world changed as we went from, computers, from DOS to Windows to, client server like type software, all the way to the internet where we could use software as a service. So it's tremendous change in the last, I would say, 30 years.
Yeah, I would imagine that one of the biggest hurdles was putting things in the cloud and people being comfortable with that. I remember a young Josh Peach coming to my office with an older, more seasoned veteran and Bobby B. And I'm asking Bob, well, where's my stuff? I want to hold my stuff. I want to be able to put it in my hands. That's the way we did it. It was a floppy drive. We didn't even have thumb drives back then, right? It was a floppy drive. And he said, it's in the cloud. And I kept looking out the window and looking up, and I'm saying, what do you mean it's in the cloud? How does it get to the? I mean, if I'm in Florida right now and there's no clouds, so where's my stuff? Yeah, it's bright and sunny. So, but
that was the biggest hurdle, Paul. It took me a while. People, well, you're going to put my data where? Just like you, same thing. And I said, well, where do you keep your money? That's what I finally started saying. Where do you keep your money? Do you keep it at your house? Do you keep it at work? And they're like, no, we keep it in the bank. I said, why do you keep it there? And they said, we keep it there because we want to be able to be safe. And if we want to get money out, we can get it from anywhere at an ATM or whatever. I said, well, that's the same principle when you go to software as a service, because now you can be anywhere and get to your data. It's also in a lot more secure, safer place in a data storage facility that's backed up and triple redundancy and all that stuff. So that was a big hurdle that we had to get across, because people were not sure about letting people keep their data.
Yeah.
Remember, Scott, that you think of it back then, we were young guys selling, software to technology directors that we were having to convince that this was the way to do it.
Right.
And, we didn't know that much about technology other than this is how we're doing it now. And technology directors still like to have it on their systems, on their campuses. But we were out there trying to convince them, nope, this is the way to go.
Yeah.
The calculator behind you would be the proof positive that we don't do a lot with technology there, Andy.
It doesn't work. It's more decoration.
Yeah, he's hiding the abacus. The abacus is on the other side of the desk. I know it is.
Yeah.
But the funny part, to continue that story down, maybe 15 years later, Josh, me and you were at the Northern New England Facilities Masters Conference, and it was in Exeter, I believe, which is right next door to where Bobby B has retired. And he came to sit and talk to some of the young bucks and does that were in the crowd about the products. And I remember walking into the cocktail hour that was full. It was at a Margaritas, surprise. It was at a Margaritas, and I yelled across the Margarita bar, and I says, "Hey, Bob, where's my stuff?" And he looked, and like all these young kids were like, "Why is that guy yelling at Bob?" And I said, "You told me I could have my stuff anytime I want it. I want it now. Give me my stuff." And he was laughing, and these poor kids didn't know what to do. But it shows you the relationships that we've built over the years, and now it's as much as it got splintered, it's back. It's coming back, and for me, I see the good guys coming back together, and I find comfort in that, being on the receiving side, the facility side, where I'm using these products now in several communities.
Yeah, well, we've had this has been a heck of a ride. I think we can all agree. I mean, Scott and I and Pat and I go back 25 years. Pat and Scott go back even further, and Andy, 20 plus years. And he was actually in a previous life. We didn't work together in a previous life. We did work together for a little bit at ACT, but what we're finding from the standpoint of technology when we're talking about this stuff is, Scott says a lot's happened in the last 30 years. Well, absolutely. But in the last 10 years, more has happened than in the previous 20. It's the level and the speed at which everything is going. And one of the things that sold me on working with Scott and Pat, which I didn't give them an option back over last summer, was, they had some really good stuff happening, and I could tell and I could see it. And the reason why I was so interested and engaged, because I was fine with not being, I was fine with being on the sidelines and kind of watching this stuff, was I got an email from Uber, of all things. And Uber sent me an email that said, Uber is celebrating our 10-year birthday. And here's all the things that you've done in 10 years. And it really struck a chord with me. It showed all the cars I went in, all the miles I did, all of the data points, all just from this little device right here. And one of the first things that Pat and Scott told me when I was talking to them about, how they built their solutions was, they said they built it mobile minded first. And so I was like, man, this is it. This is where this is going. We're going to knock this thing out of the park, because now we're in today's technology. We're designed for the truly what we've talked about for 25 years, the mobile workforces, 2 mobile workforces in education, technology, and maintenance. And we're now able to put the power of all of the data and the solutions right in the palm of people's hands and have them be able to use it effectively, efficiently, and not without having to resize screens and do all that stuff. So it's really, it's a great client experience and great client journey. And it's like nothing, I think it's like nothing any of us have gone through. I mean, it was a blink of the eye when we were pushing the discs out the door and putting them in the mail, and we thought that was really cool, right? And we started with barcode scanners that were actually looked like Star Trek guns back then. Like there wasn't, and now someone can just take an Android or an iPhone that's got a camera and go up and scan something, and bang, it's right here. And it pulls so much information up, and QR codes can do so much more than barcodes. It's just really cool what the evolution and how it's grown. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we've been really lucky, Paul. We've had a lot of mentors. We've been in thousands of schools and talked to a bunch of people like yourself. And it's not that we're that much smarter. We've just been pretty good listeners. And we had great people ahead of us that showed us the way on culture, how to act. And actually it was, about how do we help the facilities folks streamline and make things better. I remember in 1995 or 96, I'm not sure, Carsey Denning and Kent came up with the idea, okay, we're going to get rid of this paper. We're going to get rid of this fax. We're going to get rid of all this stuff, the disk. We're going to do from computer to computer, that's not on a wide area network. how are we going to do it? And that, so you remember AOL used to say, you got mail kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, so they took these modems, these, I don't even remember because I'm not real technology efficient, but they were these modems that, that you'd hook up to your computer, and then you could submit the work request to facilities from your school. And you know, you laugh now, everybody laughs about that. But back then in 1995, that you could sit at your desk as a teacher or a administrator and send something to the facilities department without having to pick up the phone, send a fax or email. It was, you know, it reduced that data entry. So it was that, you know, that vision and that trying to help people that really drives what we do.
Right.
I don't brag often. Well, maybe I do, but I don't brag about. I don't typically brag about myself unless I can brag about others. But if Pat were on here, you'd have arguably 4 of the best in the CMMS business. I'll put this team up against anybody in the industry, in the education space for CMMS workflow software. I'd put us up against just about anybody, and I think our accomplishments over the 25 years speak for it. But I think it's amazing that the 3 of us have all sat here and said, we're not big technology people, yet we've accomplished more than anybody in the technology space. But there's a reason behind that, because we've been able to align with people that we work well with, people that we care about, which is our clients first and foremost. We care about each other on the team, but also at that time, at that little piece of time in space where we find the most efficient and easiest to implement and use solutions for our clients. And that evolves and that changes, you know, as time goes on. And I just think that that's really cool. As I listen to this, I'm like, man, if we're all going to be sitting by the campfire, you know, in a couple of years and just go, hey, remember when we talked about, you know, how we're not big with technology, yet we're the number one provider. And I'm not saying number one provider by being the largest. I'm saying we're the number one provider because we're the best for our clients. And that we choose our clients in the right way, that we make sure that there's a good fit. I just think
it must be
cool.
exciting for you guys to form a team again. And I mean, everybody remembers their first real dream team, right?
Look at that,
and you know, you get excited when you think about putting together a team again, and with a group of people that you're comfortable with, and you move forward with in business. You
just put a tear in my eye. I forgot I gave you one of those shirts.
That was what it was all about. That's what it was for. It's one of my it's a Florida shirt. It's here in my closet in Florida.
Yeah. So the shirt that Paul's wearing. So the shirt that Paul is wearing, there was we called it the Territory 3. We were the 3rd territory. Territory 3 Dream Team Sales Machine, and it consisted of myself, Ryan Schwartz, Eric Erdman, and Brian Cruz, and we had New England. And I wanted to have team shirts. And the dog that's embroidered on there is Mr. Klein, who is our Manchester Terrier Min Pin, who's an inspiration to me because he was his owner burned him with battery acid, and they found him in a dumpster in 2012 during the tornado. They thought he was picked up by the tornado and ended up in the dumpster, and found that he was burned with battery acid. He's missing a toe and part of his chin. And while he's angry, he always looks majestic, and he's persevered for the last 12 years. He's probably out sleeping on the couch, enjoying his day. But that's a cool blast from the past, Paul. I don't even know if I still have one of those shirts.
For 14 minutes, I had to lean in like this and talk with just my face on the screen. So I could drop that on you at the right time. But it really must be exciting. As much as it's probably a little scary, which makes it exciting, but to form another team again and bring it forward. I think it might be a little easier as you get older and seasoned, as you know, because younger you take more risks. But I mean, you get back to the Uber thing. I remember one of my first Uber rides was on Scott's dime in California. Ann and I, my wife and I would, you know, they said, meet down in the lobby. We're going to go for dinner. And I said, great. And I meet in the lobby, and all of a sudden someone's on their phone, and Scott says, we got 2 cars coming, and these 2 big black cars come, and it was like I said, what are we with the mafia guys here? All of a sudden they call and say, bring the car around, and we went out to dinner that night. I forget the name of the restaurant, but it was a big place with the stream that ran through it and all the stone, and it was quite a thing. But you guys were always willing to be on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's scary, and a lot of people don't do that.
Well, yeah, I'll let Scott talk after I get off my soapbox. But the one thing that I learned with age was, I very rarely, in the first 20 some odd years, I very rarely took time to enjoy the good old days. So we were always running and pursuing what's next. You know, as you're in a growing business and you're building it, you kind of have to. You know, I've had 3. Scott, good news. Andy's got good news. I've got 3 webinar. That's why I've been looking at my phone. It's been blowing up here. 3 webinar requests, which is great. So it's to the what's next. But these are the good old days. This is what it's all about. This is, you know, the excitement, and to make sure that you stay in them as long as you can, and to enjoy the people that you're with while you're doing it, and to really appreciate it, because when they're gone, which, you know, sometimes sadly they do go away, you miss it a lot. And I missed Scott and Andy and Pat. I missed them a lot. I still talk to them every day, but there's no greater joy for me than being in the trenches with people I trust. There's no greater feeling every day than knowing, you know, I emailed Pat at 11 o'clock the other night, and I'm nuts because I don't sleep, and I do things at odd hours, and, you know, he responds back and says, yeah, okay. And, you know, I'll get to that, you know, and he does, he gets to it. I mean, we don't all have titles. There's no titles to this. It's just, we got a job to do. Let's get it done. And the job is to take care of our clients and give them the solution, the service, and the price that they deserve. And that should be every business. You know, if you do all that, you never have to worry about your competition. We have a firm belief that, you know, take care of your clients, and you don't need to worry about other people doing it for you. And that's pretty cool. So sorry, Scott, I jumped on my soapbox. I saw you take a deep breath in. I want to tame your excitement a little bit.
I was about to get a tear, Josh. That's what it was. It wasn't that, because Paul's right. Teams do matter. And, you know, I've been blessed to be around people Andy, I guess almost 30 years, Josh, almost 27 years, Pat, 30 years. You know, you don't have it it's very rare you find people that, especially if they've moved companies, that they still have been together. And, you know, for us to be together like this, and, you know, there's a reason. It's not just because we like each other. I mean, that's a big plus, but it's really because our passion to take care of facilities. You know, I was semi-retired for a year and a half, and you know, I was sitting at home going, what in the world, you know? You know, I don't get to see Paul. I don't see the Pirate anymore. I don't get to see Ken. I don't see Josh, Pat.
I made it 3 months.
You know,
3 months. That's as far as I got.
You know, it was. I told my wife, I got to do something. You know, and it was also all the clients calling us saying, hey, Scott, what's next? You know, what we need to move to the next iteration of whatever CMMS is. And, you know, I was thinking, man, you know, what in the world? And Pat was getting the same phone call. So, you know, it's wonderful to be able to have this team that's been together 30 years. It's also wonderful to get back into a group of people that I've known for 30 years. In every state I can go somewhere and there's a friend. You know, people always ask me, well, you know, you talk about me taking you to dinner. You know, how many times has Paul taken me to dinner, or how many times has other people taken me to dinner? It's about relationships. It's about taking care of people. And, you know, our old CEO, Kent Hudson, used to say, what's your say-do ratio? If you say something, do you do it? And I can tell you, everybody on this little square, and Pat and other people that I know, we've had a good say-do ratio. And I think that's what has helped us be successful. So, you know, and the new technology. I mean, let's face it. You know, when you can, if you're building a house or reconstructing a house, which a new house or renovating a house, which would you rather do? You know, you'd rather build one, right? Because you get to use all the new stuff. You get to make it look nice. Well, that's what we were able to do, which really made it a great and fun experience so far. And we have the most brilliant chief technology officer you could ever know. So,
dude, yeah, Stewart's lights out magician. What they're doing is just amazing. You know, and I'll say this with Pat, with Carp's passion, and I say this to anybody in sales and anything that you're doing. If if you wouldn't do something with someone because you're not going to get a commission, then you shouldn't do it. And I've said this before, I think live, but and Scott, you are my sales manager, so you can confirm this. I've never made a commissionable dollar off Paul Anastasi, not once. And I had to go to bid when you were in Newton. You guys go to bid every 3 years, and you weren't part of that bid. I had to go to bid. I had to go to the town hall. I had to submit that RFP every 3 years, and I never got paid because you guys came on 2 years before I did. And I'll tell you right now, and this no greater example than this. The fact that I built a relationship with Paul the way that I did, if I didn't, I'd be dead, because he saved my life, and I've told it 1,000 times. So if that isn't reason enough to make sure that the people that you're around, that you work for every day, are people that you'd want in your life every day, I don't know what is. But there are countless individuals that I have had in my life, and I think that the operations, business, IT, transportation, food services, facilities, I think all of the people behind the scenes in education space and higher education, public education, private education, there are unsung heroes, and they are the greatest people to work for every day. And it's been such an honor. And I've gone out of the education space, and we've had manufacturing facilities and all sorts of other folks call us and say, hey, we want some of your software. And it's like, no, we're staying in our space. We're staying in our lane because we love the lane we're in. We love the people that we serve, and we love the difference that we get to make and see every day. And that's pretty awesome.
That's a good point, Josh. In that so many people think work order systems are work order systems and can apply to any market. But when you really look at serving a particular market and understanding how their workflow works and all the things that touch it, like especially in schools, how your events touch it, and how that's a process that if you can help make it efficient, that it's a big help to your clients. And when you're trying to hit multiple markets, you're going to miss that completely.
Oh yeah.
And that's I think a big part of why I'm back working with you guys again is it's the market we understand better than anybody. Put us over in manufacturing.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what the value proposition was, but in a school, we know it and we understand it and we care.
And you guys not only built your relationships in your territories, you've crossed over. I mean, I've known Andy for years, and I'm nowhere near Texas, in that territory, and so many of the others. And your business model was, and I'm sure will continue to be, was make a friend of your client. And that a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah.
That can be dangerous. And you guys mastered it.
When we started, I give the credit to Miss Joan Warren Maddox. When we all started, Joan, God bless her, she's not here with us anymore, and we miss her every day. But when we started, if anybody ever called you a customer, Paul, and she heard it, she'd probably smack him on the back of the head, because Joan truly believed that a customer was somebody that walked in, did a transactional, did a transaction and left. Right? A client is somebody that you work with and you take care of for life, and that was instilled in us early. We were lucky to have her. She was so good with clients, and they were her clients. Even if you were my friend or whatever, you're still her client, right? And so she taught us that everybody says the client doesn't come first, your employees come first, which I get that. But Joan said both come first. You take care of you teach your employees how to take care of your client, and you take care of your employees, you take care of your client, and you'll do well. And she truly believed that. And she, it's so funny. I look at LinkedIn, I look at other things, and I see all these posts about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. The thing that it's lacking is context and passion. I'm sure that it's there, but you can't see it in a post sometimes. These people really have it, and it when somebody has it, when they have that passion to take care of people. And that was there, and it permeated through the whole the whole companies that we've worked with. And if you didn't do it, you didn't make it there. So I give credit.
Now who's bringing the tears?
Huh?
Now
Sorry.
who's bringing the tears? I did it with the shirt, but you dropped the big one.
Yeah, she gets the credit there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just printed this. That's on one of my screensavers, and after Joan passed, this was put around all over the office periodically, and it says never forget, the client is first. They are not an interruption, and they are not something to strive to get away from. They literally make or break us. We all chose client service as our career. It takes a special person to fill those shoes. It is a desire you have to be born with, to follow the golden rule without even having to think about it. Finding people like that and building a team is what makes us magical and unique. Joan Maddox. That's Joan. And that's what we had the honor to be taught by Joan, and what she left for a legacy, because she did leave us way too soon. I'm still upset that I texted with her a week before her passing, and she still thought that Andy was her favorite salesperson, because I put a lot of work in to be her favorite. And, it just
and we got a little chat here. I'm assuming this is our number one follower, Dave Young.
David Young. Yeah, it looks like David Young.
And he said client and not customer. She would get red in the neck.
Yeah, for sure, David.
Yeah. And his comment earlier than that was, what a great group of guys we have here on this podcast. But we know that, so we don't need to repeat that. What the things that you do for facilities, for schools, it seemed like it's a snap of the fingers, but it's been years. It's been an evolution. I mean, my first work order, I'm not going to say program, my first work order system was carbonless triplicate paper.
Press hard, right, Paul?
Right. Press hard, because you're going through 3 copies, and the pink sheet would stay with the person that was making the request. The yellow sheet would go downtown to the business office, and the white sheet would come to facilities so that I could assign it to the right people. I had to actually create a position called work order monitor, just so I had someone that could put all those papers back together again when they came back.
Yeah, my first PM system, my dad built in 1991 or 1992, and he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he brought me a metal box, a 3x5 metal box, and it had numbers 1 through 31 and letters A through Z. And he said, if you can't manage facilities in this box, then you can't manage facilities. And technology has taken that metal box and made it more efficient, more effective, easier to access, and be able to pull all that information that's on those 3x5 cards. Because that 1 through 31 was all my PMs, right? It was change filter, and then I'd move it to the next number, and then because it was your monthly checks. And the A through Z was my directory of vendors, or numbers and people that I had to call, because back then we didn't have directories in our phones, right? That's something that's been really amazing. Is a lot of people go into a career and they don't change. And, my first big talk that I did, Paul, you were there at Gillette Stadium. You were there, Scott, 10 years ago this past October. And it was to change or not to change. How is the question? And change is tough. And many people go through their careers and they don't change. They don't sit and do something. I can remember we had a partnership with Nextel. And what did it have to be? Java. They were dead set. We were the first non-Java enabled app. It wasn't even an app in 04. They called it something else. And he says, it has to be Java. I'm like, why? And he goes, apps will never be built without Java. I don't even know what Java is. I'm drinking some, but that if we went on that mindset and we lived on that mindset, we would be way behind the times. And that's what's really cool about this is we've changed and evolved as time has changed and evolved, and made great solutions that people can use easier today, opposed to trying to push them on something that we built yesterday.
And even if Josh and I and Andy and all of us would tell you, even if it's not us, do something. Don't, like Josh says, change is hard, but even if it's not us, we tell people there's technology out there that can make your life easier, and help you do reporting and help your people get their job done better. And I tell the story all the time about, schools are for education, right? And some people look down on custodians and maintenance people and other things like that. And I remember being at a Dude U one time, and a custodian came up to me and he said, he said, Scott, I want to thank you. I said, why? And he goes, because when I went home to talk to my son tonight, he goes, what'd you do at work? And instead of saying I cleaned the toilet and, you know, all that, take out the trash, he said, I was on this computer on my phone, you know, talking about how to do my work. And it made my son say, wow, my dad's using technology, you know. So stories like that are what drive this and make us do what we do, you know. So again, do something. Don't just, you know, you know, we used to have a saying about donothing.com, you know, and it didn't mean they weren't doing anything. Everybody's working and doing a hard job. But sometimes, you know, if you know, the thing about taking time to sharpen your axe, you can cut more wood. That, you know, that applies here. So do something.
Yeah. Carp, we haven't had a chance to talk about this. And Paul, this call that I had just before us coming on was from what you were in the audience as visual proof. There were 100 people sitting in a room and all directors of facilities, captive audience. And I went the whole day and I never said the company name and I never pushed the software that we provide. And at the end of the day, I said, look, guys, I don't care what you do. You got to do three things. You got to use something. You got to use something that fits for your team. And the last thing you want to do is you want to use something that you look at the vendor as a partner, not as a purchase that you have to make. And if you do those three things, you will win. And hey, it might not be the right decision right now. You might need to go into it and find out that it's not the right decision, but those three things will give you the ability to make the right decision with the information that you can get right now. And when you do that, that makes the difference. You know, that makes all the difference. Is you got to do something. It doesn't matter. It does matter. We obviously want you to come on board with us because we feel we're the best, but if that's on us, we have to show that. That's not on the client.
But it's also that you guys, the three that I can see here, and I know Pat, you have a synergy. You have something that's there and a knack, and each of you have a different,
totally different.
You have a different. I mean, so you talked about Gillette. It jogged me to the story where I saw Scott get up in front of the crowd. I think I'm not sure if it was this dream team that you made them all get up and tell a story. Scott got up in front of the crowd and told everybody how he was having dinner, sitting at a bar in a restaurant at one of his travel things. And there was a guy at the end of the bar yapping away. Yap. And there was a young guy and there was a whole bunch of young girls. And you said to him, hey, how come you're not over there sitting with those young girls? You're sitting by yourself and you're just talking away with me. And you hired that person. I mean, how many people can tell that story that you walk into a bar and you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that starts with, I walked into a bar, but none of them where you walk out with, you know, an employee, a valued employee, just by talking to him sitting there. And that's a knack. Not everybody could do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's all this talk about culture, and I've learned about corporate soul and how rare it is. And I think that's what we have. And I think it's all about the people, right? It's Andy, Scott, Pat, and I are all very different people. Yet I know that all of them would, you know, they'd be there for me, and they have been there for me at a moment's notice. And that's something that you find inside people. You don't find it on resumes. I'm listening to people, you know, unfortunately, when you look at Google, you know, letting go of 22,000 people, and Salesforce letting go of 8,000 people, and Meta letting go of 11,000 people. There's a lot of people in the workforce that are going out needing to find a new job, and they're going through, you know, 8, 10, 12 interviews, you know, role playing when there's not even role playing being done in the company. And, you know, you're not going to find that soul in that person. And you're not going to give them that soul. And it's like, it's such a great piece of character that, you know, and Andy's done it 100 times to me over the years when I go to visit in Texas. He's like, hey, you got to go talk to this person. They're really great. They might be a great fit. In Carp. And it's always like, hey, you got to talk to this person. Maybe they're not a right fit now, but they might be a right fit down the road. And that's something you always want to have. You always want to have a bullpen. I mean, Carp, I don't know how many calls you're getting every week, but I mean, I get so many calls, and it's not people we work with. It's just people that see what we're doing. It's people that have had no work experience with us. It's other vendors. Paul, you saw it last week. You know, a vendor came over to me and he said, I don't know what's going on. I've had a great job for 15 plus years. But I'm seeing we did an impromptu webinar in the hotel lobby with 12 school districts that was literally put together in 3 minutes. And Pat jumped on and he's like, this is a dream team right here. You guys are putting something together. Take my card if there's ever an opportunity. I mean, we have that energy, that synergy, and that soul it's contagious, and people want it because so few people are happy today.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, if any of those people that Josh just talked about getting laid off want to be custodians, contact me. I can get you a job tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
facilities directors. I mean, it's like we're having such a hard time in our industry filling positions.
Well, you say that, Paul, and here's the other thing about that. Everybody's retiring, right? The baby boomers, all of us are getting to that age where, everybody's retiring. So, if you're a business administrator and you're listening, help out your team, because here's the reason why. When they walk out the door, all that knowledge is walking out the door with them.
That's right.
So you need to get them some kind of software where they can start storing that data, having information about equipment. So when they walk out the door, your next person isn't going, man, I don't know what to do about this. I don't know anything. I have no information. So, if nothing else, you need to do it so that you can start maintaining all your information about your assets and your school district, because I can guarantee you every day in there's probably 10 or 12 today that are walking out the door with, insurmountable amount of knowledge in their head. So,
I mean, and I'm assuming that it's a national problem. Are you seeing it in Texas, Andy? Is it same thing down there?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
I mean, it's some of the best maintenance directors in the world. They've hit their retirement quota with the teacher retirement system. And I had one guy asked him, I says, are you looking at retirement? He goes, I'm one bad meeting from retirement.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're staying on, but their attitude is, as long as, they're feel like everybody's cooperating and respected and understand what they're doing, and they're enjoying the work, they're going to keep doing it. But if it ever turns, these guys are like, I'm ready to walk out the door.
Well, and they can. They've done their time, and and then you've got, and then on the flip side of that, though, what I think is really cool is like Dave Pettit in Joplin that could have retired years ago or a couple of years ago, and he says, I'm still relevant. I still have things to do, and I say his name because I think we should recognize those people. Paul, you saw me at a meeting where they did an introduction. There was 60 or 70 people in a room, and I said, hey, let's do an introduction of everybody. And the first person that gave his name said, my name is so-and-so and I'm retired. And the entire room erupted in applause. Yep. And then a few people later was a first timer, a first year facility director, and everybody was silent. And I stopped and I said, your applause should be as loud, if not louder, for the accomplishment of someone choosing to come into this industry and arguably one of the most challenging times. Yep. And show that support, because retirement's stupid, right? It is. I'm just saying it. I mean, Scott, you couldn't do it. Paul, you couldn't do it. I'm not allowing you to do it, Paul. I mean, it's you're like it's like your wife might tell you got to keep busy, but I'm telling you, I'm keeping you busy forever. But retirement's overrated because you're racing to get to something where you don't have to do anything, and right. that's not really an effective life. Like, as long as you're pertinent and as long as you're relative to the universe, you should be sharing things with people, and you should be making a difference and an impact and making a dent. The world's a scary place. If we can make it a little less scary and do some good, then that's great. And that comes with changing people's mindsets. Not being one bad meeting away from leaving. That's not what they were built for.
No, and for the facilities directors that are out there, don't be afraid to train your replacement or to teach the younger guys. What they're doing. And hey, we want to welcome PB. Pat Buchanan's in the house.
Hello.
So I'm just we're talking about facilities directors and how a lot of people aged out at the same time. We're having trouble filling the positions. And some of the best facilities directors I know came up through the trades. I mean, Kenny Wirtz was the plumber.
Absolutely.
So take the time. What's that song say? When you get where you're going, don't forget, look back and help the one behind you. Be humble and kind. Don't worry. Right. It's not a threat, to train someone.
Terry Taylor was another one of those that came from I think Terry was a custodian when he started. And then now he's like one of the best known on the West Coast, one of the best known facilities directors there are. So
Brandon Chabola in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I just listened to the podcast with Burke Jones, which he's been on our podcast, and I've name dropped him a number of times. He had Brandon on, and I didn't know much about Brandon. I'm doing a keynote for the PASBO chapter this summer, but found out how he went up the ranks and how he chose to get himself educated and get professional development. And fortunately, his school reimbursed him for it, but he was willing to put the work in to get to that next step. Which I think that's one thing I'll say that doesn't have anything to do with software, but has to do everything with leadership, which is one of the things that we love to do is just have the entire team involved. And it's kind of like, because we want to have them involved so that we understand where they want to be, because where they are might not be where they want to be, but they may want to be a custodian their whole life, but maybe they want to be a lead custodian, or maybe they want to be a director of facilities, or maybe when I did the research with the Ukraine, when I did the research on everything that was happening in Ukraine, and found the New Jersey principal that started as a custodian. Well, his goal was to be the principal at the school where he learned to speak English, knowing where people are and trying to learn from it. It's good to see that Pat shows up and then
There he is. He's
disappears. Yeah. So
Pat, we had talked earlier about how exciting it is to rebuild the dream team.
Oh, yes.
There's nothing to it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Hey, you got the right people. Everything else falls into place.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you're coming on. You're a new startup. It's got to be exciting and scary as hell all at the same time.
Oh, scary, petrifying, scary. I mean, there's a lot of horror movies involved for sure. But yeah, it has been definitely exciting. We've had the opportunity to reconnect with a lot of old friends we've had. We've had a lot of chances to do things a lot of different ways than we have in the past, and it's been definitely very exciting.
Yeah, I find that where we've come, talk about the facilities industry and getting back to CMMS and all of the days of our lives as we were talking. It's like we started with reactive maintenance, and the work orders were tracking our reactive maintenance. Yeah. And we just no one could get to preventative maintenance. And that was 10, 15 years ago. But now we're at that point where we know the value of the preventative maintenance. We know the value of collecting our assets like we talk about now. Yeah, before we might have done that, but once we collected them, they sat in a file somewhere. And we couldn't get to doing it. But our industry in the facility side, on the user side, we're at the point now where we believe in it, and we are convincing others that we need to do the preventative maintenance in these buildings. And COVID just, hit that home when so many HVAC systems weren't ready. I'm working for, and I'm not afraid to use the community's name, Dover Sherborne. I was working for Dover Sherborne in Massachusetts as a consultant here. And when I looked at their HVAC, we brought in a company to look at the HVAC system during COVID, and they were already there. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. They were using MERV 13 filters. Their equipment was built for it. Their upkeep was absolutely amazing. I mean, they were paying outside companies to do it all. They weren't tracking it. They were doing it, but they really didn't know how. But they were there, and I think there's so many communities now that are there. They're ready for the preventative maintenance, and that's where we need to go next. That's where we need to be comfortable.
Dover Sherborne has the best hockey rink for high school hockey in the country, hands down, to watch. Heated stands. Yeah, they don't mess around in Dover Sherborne.
They also have some of the largest income in the
one of my favorite stories about CMMS, and it's in Andy's. It's one of Andy's good friends, our good friends, Pat, everybody's good friend. His name is Chuck Edwards. I won't say the school district, but he worked there for a lot of years. And, he said one day a board member walked into his office and said, "Hey, I'm tired of this." And Chuck goes, "Sir, what are you talking about?" He goes, "My son's a star basketball player, and every time he goes in the locker, there's bugs in his locker. There's bugs in the other boy's locker. And look, we're tired of it." Chuck got on his computerized maintenance management. And this was years ago. He got on it, but you could still run reports. He ran the report, his preventive maintenance, his scheduled maintenance report. And he said, "You know what? We do monthly and biweekly, the Terminex guy comes out and pesticide around to make sure that there's no bugs out there. But what we found is the kids have been leaving food in their locker, and here's 6 notes that we've left to tell the kids to quit leaving food in their locker. Well, the board member tucked his head, said, "I'm sorry, I'll talk to my son about it," and walked out the door. Now, if Chuck hadn't had that information in front of him, what would that interaction have been like? So, that's the kind of things that CMS, that you don't think about when you're doing, when you're buying, but that's the kind of things that can help you, and the other thing with Chuck, I'll tell you another story about Chuck. He was there, and he'd been doing, telling them, "I need a new boiler. I need a new roof. I need all this stuff." And his board members kept saying, "No, we're going to push it. We're going to push it." Well, that happened for 8 years, and a whole new board came on, new superintendent. They decided to do a condition assessment. They went out and they did a condition assessment. It was bad. So they called Paul into the boardroom, and they go, "How did you let this district get in this condition?" So Paul had all that he had requested, all that he'd done, showed him all the reports that he'd done. And, so there are things that CMMS, besides just doing a workflow, sending back and forth and helping you do your job, it also helps you get credit for what you do and shows the things that you're doing. So to your point, Paul, I think people have accepted that we're not going to run to failure anymore, that we have to get the job done. So.
Well, and that two additional add-ons to that is sometimes CMMS showing failure is actually a success.
Yep.
Because most people, I mean, think about what we have, right? The average square foot house is 1,500 square foot. That's what I'm responsible for. The average school is 250,000 square foot with basically a wildly understaffed team that's got to keep it from leaking, lit, heated, air conditioned, cleaned, fully operational and functional every day. And by the way, the average household with 1,500 square foot has 2 kids in it, and these schools have 700 kids in it. So it's a hugely different environment that people can't wrap their head around and understand. And think about PM. Your air conditioning unit goes out when? In the dead of summer when it's 110 degrees out. And what does the HVAC technician come out when they come? First question they ask, when was the last time you changed your filter? Why? Because the most common reason why you have a freeze up or you have a failure is because your filter's clogged. So understanding that, and sometimes just showing a PM system that shows, hey, we've got a workload just on PM that requires 3 full staff employees. We've got 2. And PS, that's not including the reactive work of everything that we get asked to do every day. And so that's a huge thing. And then the second piece is transparency is huge. It's monumental. Unfortunately, social media is the devil. And I will say it until the day I'm dead. I think that social media causes such an uproar. All of a sudden, everybody's an expert on everything, and they put their feedback and input. And one of the best examples of transparency is Albuquerque Public Schools. You go to the Albuquerque Public School site and their facilities, John Dufay and Dr. Gabby Blakey, they've taken it upon themselves to share everything without anybody having to ask for it. Projects, work completed, PM schedules, everything. It's all right there. You want to know what's going on? It's right there. If you don't look for it, and if you don't find it, and if you don't proactively pay attention to it, that's on you. But they also can show that at a moment's notice if they're in a board meeting and pull up all the stats and reports and everything. It's pretty powerful stuff, and we need to do that. It's no longer the day of brush it under the rug or don't answer the phone, because there's just too many outlets that can come out and throw stuff at you.
And what we've found was that everybody becomes an expert when we go into something like COVID, and to have the background information, collecting the assets and the reports that I can get from these products, it's fact. It's not, I told the story when we were in St. Louis recently, Josh, that, when a politician comes into the facilities world and wants to tell us about the facility, it just scares the hell out of me. To hear the governor of New York during COVID get on the national news and say, we need MERV 13s in all of our systems. What does he know about MERV 13s? And he doesn't know how old the equipment is and if it can take a MERV 13. Because of that, people were putting in these filters and they were killing their machinery. It was burning up. Motors were dying and belts were breaking. But if I have the information, If I have the data that tells me those machines are 20 years old and they're not going to take that filter, or those machines are 5 years old and it's okay to put in a MERV 13 filter. That's the knowledge that makes me the expert, because I've got the data behind me to prove it.
Well, one better, Paul, because I was doing, when you talk about New York, and I did a lot of work with, we gave a lot of webinars and infomercial type stuff to help people around the country with Keith Watkins at New Rochelle, which was the epicenter of COVID. And I didn't know this until I did some research. If you've got a piece of equipment that can take a MERV 7 filter, you might not want to put a MERV 7 filter on it, because the second you put the filter on and it starts sucking in particles and they collect on the filter, that filter is no longer rated at MERV 7. It's a MERV 9, right? It's the filter is actually doing its job, but it's also containing and closing those gaps of air to be able to get through. So while you think you might be doing the right thing, you really want to look at the manufacturer specs. You really want to understand what that equipment can handle and why. And sadly, there's a lot of people, because there isn't that talent pool that there used to be, and because of the advancement of technology, especially with HVAC equipment, where people don't know that stuff. And that's something you need to dig into. And you can't just listen to people and say, oh yeah, well, MERV 13, because Charlie's using it. Well, Charlie's got a brand new district. Charlie's got high efficiency equipment that's what it's designed for. Right. Not a 1958 building with fallout shelter that got rehabilitated in 1978, and it's got old equipment that can't handle that stuff. So,
and there's regional pockets of how we read our equipment. I mean, what do we use? 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks of air conditioning in Massachusetts. Yep. I'm thinking down in Texas, they're using a little bit more air conditioning than we do.
Yeah. Well, that's a big piece of getting a lot of folks in an area. And that's what we're doing. We've got some consolidated areas where we're getting a huge market share, where now they can benchmark and measure with their peers and have conversations and say, hey, here's what I'm looking at. Here's what this manufacturer spec is. You're down in Florida, Paul, not too far away from the ocean. Well, that salt air is going to have a huge difference from me up in the mountains here in the South Shore of Massachusetts, right? Might say South Shore, but I got 50 miles to the closest ocean or saltwater air. So there's a lot of different factors that people need to contribute and think about.
Yeah, I'm at 88% humidity today here. It's like that raises havoc with a lot of the equipment and stuff. I'm working for a community back home. It's the library in this town. The chiller's down. Now I've shown them the reports of how many times we've made repairs to the chiller. I've given them the estimates of what it's going to cost to repair it, and it doesn't make sense to repair it. It should be replaced. And the Board of Selectmen still aren't, because it's cold. They're not thinking about air conditioning. Well, you got a building full of paper. Everything in that building are books and paper. Yep. If it comes to August, when it gets soupy here in Massachusetts, our supply chain, everyone talks about supply chain. HVAC equipment is 15, 20, weeks out. Some of them 10 months, we're going into waiting for equipment. And we're talking August. I know I'm panicking, and it's just about February, but we're not going to if we don't do it now.
I just saw a post that Saloom in Missouri put that we met last week, Paul. He's got 119 units getting to be installed that he was, trying to keep up with the supply chain. Yeah. But HVAC right now, HVAC units, they're 352 days out in some cases. Right. So you're talking about a full year. So this whole supply chain screwiness, it's not going away. When you had manufacturing plants closed for 3 months in 2020 that were mass producing equipment, you don't catch up overnight, especially when everybody's getting this money to put this equipment in. So you've got funds available, people wanting to purchase, and you got manufacturing plants that can't keep up with the demand. The math doesn't add up. So it's not going away tomorrow. So you got to definitely plan.
So important of what you all, that's not a Southern thing, but you all are doing, because we need to know so much more ahead of time now. We need to know what's going to be has to be replaced, what has to be done, because we need to plan for it so much farther ahead. And it's so important what you're doing there.
Yep. Bobby B said, good stuff. conversation positive. I don't know what else he said here. He's got ... So God only knows what the rest of it is.
Yeah,
Thanks,
he
Bobby
wasn't
B.
on early. He wasn't on early enough to hear me talking about him.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty much a given that he knows he's going to get talked about on a regular basis. I think that's something that when people make an impact in your life, that talking about them is important, and remembering them is important. And Bob's actually one of the greatest examples, and I don't think I've shared this story, but and it's one of my new keynotes. I haven't figured out the title of it, and Paul, I think I shared it with you, but when my grandmother fell just after Thanksgiving, was rushed to the hospital, my mom called and said, "Hey, you got to get to the hospital to say goodbye." And my grandmother was my best friend, and 5 days shy of 100.5. And I got my truck, and 2 days after Thanksgiving, I'm doing 100 miles an hour. I hope none of my local police people are listening, but doing 100 miles an hour down the street, and I hit a traffic light. It was a red light, and I said, "What the hell am I doing?" And it wasn't how fast I was going; it was because the radio was on and Christmas music was playing. And I immediately changed the station, and the song by Macklemore called "Be Glorious" popped up. And there's a line in there that says, when you die twice. When you're buried, and the second when people stop talking about you. And there's a lot of truth to that. And Bob is the first person I know that had a baseball field named after him while he was still alive. And I tell him all the time, I said, "Bob, did they read the wrong obituary? What's going on here? You're inviting me to the dedication of your baseball field. I think that people think you're gone." And that was a huge learning lesson for me, to make sure that we appreciate and say thank you. And this goes outside of software, but we all have somebody we can thank. And the last thing I want to do is have somebody go that I didn't get to say thank you to. And so, making sure you have gratitude, and that goes with the people that you work with. And I really appreciate the Scott, Pat, and Andy being on here, because Scott and Pat, I think you guys saw that email that needs to be addressed right away with a exciting opportunity that you guys were copied on. This has been a great podcast, by the way, because email is blowing up.
We could talk forever with this.
Oh yeah. No, please do. I've just had a flurry of amazing emails and opportunities that have been coming up. So this is great. So keep talking away.
Yeah.
And David Young, we will never not remember Jones. He said, "Thanks for remembering Joan." That's another one that I was glad I got to say thank you to and spend time. So,
and he just came through again. It says, listening to a podcast with Peach and the other day, one thing that comes to mind is you all come from different backgrounds, but you have mutual respect for each other and the industry.
Oh yeah. The Be Awesome podcast with David Cooks. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And that's so true that we can come together, and like you say, we all have different backgrounds. And we've come so far together, and that's the client relationship with all of you guys. The client speaking here. I'll never say customer again.
Well, you're family, Paul.
Yeah, family now, but we've grown up. I mean, Scott and I trade pictures of our grandkids and things like that, and Josh shows me really great pictures of young Chance running through the backyard and all those fun things that we get to live in our life and on the personal side. And how many people can say that and do that in your work life. So as much as it can be a dangerous model, I think it's well worth it.
It's a model well executed is I mean, it's and you have to have the people that want to do it. You can't. It has to be genuine. I mean, I was going to Be Awesome was created because I was going to write a sales book called "If You Don't Care, You Don't Count," because so few people actually seem genuinely care, and that goes back to us in the '90s. Where the mission statement at the first company that we all worked together was where we take prospects to become customers, customers to become clients, clients to be friends, friends to become family. And it's the life cycle of a client for life, where we I call it day one to day done. I want you, Kent used to say, give us 30 days, we'll give you 30 years. And that's the commitment that I know I've made. I've given my phone number out, which has been my phone number since 1991, 508-238-5711. That phone number is my direct phone number, whether you bought a bottle of water from me, a cell phone, or software. And that's the commitment that we all have to all of our clients. That doesn't matter, if we have something to sell you, we want you to be a client for life and friend for life and family for life. So that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool.
Right. So I'm thinking that we're running up against our time here, Josh. So we should wrap it up.
Yep.
I've got a personal shout out I'd like to make in the industry, and that's to a custodian that I worked with in Newton. Josh is always pulling up these stories, but this one I lived. Back when I was in Newton, Ernie at the time was 82 years old, coming to work every day, didn't miss. And he had, while I was working there 16 years, he had both hips replaced and a shoulder, and kept coming back to work, and just wanted nothing but to be in that building cleaning for those kids. He worked during the days. He knew all the teachers. He knew all the kids. Most of the teachers were students there that Ernie knew when they were students. And he is 82 years old, and I haven't kept in touch with him since I retired, but when I left, he was still working. I was 61 and said, I had enough. I'm retiring. And Ernie was still, digging in there every day. His biggest thing was riding on the floor scrubber with his cup of coffee. I got him a floor scrubber with a cup holder, and he thought I was the greatest thing. And he cleaned those floors, stopped and talked to me. He was the best PR person any facilities group could ever have. And so my shout out goes to Ernie Pelletier at the Newton Public Schools, just doing a great job forever.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I just did Ernie Custodian Newton, and he was the person of the week in 2011, and he was starting his 52nd year.
Yes. He lied to get into the war in World War II. He lied about his age. And when he came out, civil service was built for the veterans coming out. He got a job as a custodian when he came out of the war, and just took it from there.
Yeah. So it looks like he retired in 2020, Paul.
Okay.
It looks like that's what I'm looking at, a city report, but I could be wrong. So I'm not even doing one this week because Ernie deserves it. And so what I'm tasking you with is I want you to track down Ernie. I want you to find out what size shirt he is, and he's going to get the Be Awesome box from you to as a sign of gratitude. I'll have it for you at 3 a.m. when I pick you up for our trip to Canada next week.
I can't wait. Josh and I have been on many adventures together, but he says, let's go to Canada in February and drive.
Yeah.
I said, okay, good idea. Good idea. So we'll see you then.
the more people that you can have in your life, Paul, that are up to those adventures without asking questions and just do it, which is all these people on this call. They've all been on. They all can say a Peach adventure, or they've created an adventure for Peach to go on. Those are the stories and the memories that make it all worthwhile.
Right, and that's what makes that synergy that I talked about.
Yeah.
So we'll close it out here and say thank you to all of our watchers, listeners, Be Awesome at FM followers, our number one follower, Dave Young. Thank you. And Dave says, last comment, bring your helmet, he says.
He's got one.
I will, Dave, for sure. So like we say all the time, if you can be anything, be awesome.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.